The Odyssey, Christopher Nolan's next movie, coming out in July of next year. I've already got my ticket for it. So I figured, why not? Why not go on my own personal Odyssey, where I explore the work of a man who's become a legend in filmmaking. When you hear this man's name, you think of awesomeness, you think of emotion, and you think of absolutely what in the fuck have I seen? I am, of course, talking about, like I said, Christopher Nolan. And in the next 7, 8 months, I will be going on my own personal Odyssey, going through every single one of his films before the Odyssey comes out. And I figured, well, why don't we start with the one that's celebrating an anniversary this year? I'm, of course, talking about the 2000 hit Memento. This, of course, was written and directed by Christopher Nolan and was based on a short story written by his brother, Jonathan Nolan. This movie stars Guy Pearce, Carrie-Anne Joe Pantoliano, as well as a whole host of others. And it tells the story about a man named Leonard Shelby who suffers from a condition where he forgets things relatively quickly. And so he has to either put tattoos on his body or make pictures via a Polaroid camera to remember things. And he is out on a mission to try and find out who is a mysterious John G. that, as his tattoo says, did something to his wife and then killed her. So, even with his condition, is he going to be able to try and find who exactly did this to his wife? We'll have to wait and see. So, this one I've heard a lot about. I've seen the meme of Guy Pearce holding up the Polaroid picture. I've seen that meme template all over the internet, and I've just heard a lot about the movie, and more specifically, its structure, how the movie's story unfolds over the course of the runtime. And I will admit, the way that the story unfolds is really, really good. Of course, everyone knows at this point that the color scenes move backward. They start at the farthest end, basically where our story ends, and moves backward in time. Whereas the black and white scenes, they start at the very beginning of the timeline, and they move forward in time until we reach the midpoint. And that's where the movie ends, essentially, is at our midpoint. Which I found to be a really, really, really unique way of telling this story. Because as you are learning bits and pieces about Leonard and Teddy and Natalie and all this stuff throughout each of the segments, it really starts to put together like the true nature and the true actions of certain characters. Like, for instance, everyone uses Leonard to their own sick needs. Like Bert, tells him, I accidentally put you in 2 rooms because I basically double booked you because I wanted to try and get more money out of you. Just next time, just ask for a receipt whenever you check in, and whenever he goes down later to basically pay for his room, he's basically paying for 2 rooms essentially. Natalie, when her and Leonard have their fight in her house, when Leonard sucker punches her, she walks out to her car, and Leonard's like, "Okay, just remember, gotta write it down, gotta remember, gotta write it down." And he's trying to find a pen to write this down, and Natalie spends enough time in her car, and then he hears that door slam, and that's enough of a reaction, enough split second to get him to stop thinking. Him resets, and he goes, "What happened to you?" And she pitches the angle of, Dodd did this, and basically continues Leonard down his path. But in the black and white scenes, you have Leonard talk about, this dude, Sammy Jenkins, about how he had this similar condition, and they put him through all sorts of testing because he used to be an insurance guy, and they put him through all these tests where they would sit him down at a table with all these objects, but a couple of them would be electrified, and even doing this day after day, week after week, he would still grab on to the electric item. People with memory loss would have been able to, even through repetition, would be able to avoid the electrical objects every single time. And when Sammy's wife comes in to basically, say, I'm not, going against what, the audit says. I just want to know what's happening with my husband. And, Leonard gives the answer of, like, I believe that Sammy should be able to form new memories. That sets her on basically, the downward path of basically like, okay, I need to make this a life or death situation. And, she keeps telling, Sammy, hey, you need to give me my insulin shot. And he keeps giving her the insulin shot, once in the arm, once in the hip, and then again in the thigh. And that's enough to basically OD her, and then slips into a coma and then dies. Because Sammy didn't know. He just simply forgot. But I think the thing that really makes that interesting is what really makes this really interesting is 2 scenes that happen in the movie. One is that when we see Sammy in what I assume to be a mental hospital, there's a quick shot, maybe like a couple of frames, where we see Sammy sitting in a chair, but a guy or a girl passes frame, and just for a few frames, Leonard's in the chair. Now, I read that as, Sammy is Leonard, where, in the big spiel that Teddy gives to Leonard after Leonard's taking care of Jimmy in that house, is like, what you told me about Sammy is that's what happened with you. So my assumption is like Sammy Jenkins is, this alias that Leonard has created to basically shelf away his guilt of what he did to his wife, essentially. And then another scene is Leonard with the escort, where he's basically trying to like reenact what happens with the night he loses his memory, his ability to form new memories, I should say, and how he lost his wife. He's basically trying to re I don't want to say like jumpstart his mind, but he's trying to retrace his steps and trying to, remember his wife. Because then afterwards he takes those items, he goes out to, somewhere and basically starts a fire and then burns them all. Because he even says the line, it's like, you know, I can't remember to forget you. Because he's trying so hard to just like let her go, but he can't let her go because he can't remember to let her go. Like that is such a great poignant line, and he has to, well, like he does like put himself through this trauma of reliving what he thinks to be like the worst night of his life, where he lost his wife and loses his memory or his ability to learn or to get new memories, I should say. Um, like this is really good, phenomenal writing, and it's not as big and as grandiose as say like Inception or is it an Interstellar, but it's still really really good. A man who, and even Teddy says like, something did happen in his house. It's just not exactly what he says happened because Leonard is an unreliable narrator. Um, like something did happen, but it's not exactly that. And he created the story of Sammy Jenkins to basically kind of a create something that he can use as a reference to his condition, and B, I would also say like shelf his guilt over what actually did happen with his wife. Um, Everyone in the cast does an absolutely awesome job in this movie. Guy Pearce plays his role of Leonard so good. Joe Pantoliano as Teddy slash John Gamble. Um, he's really good in this. Carrie-Anne Moss as Natalie is really, really good, especially when she yells at Leonard and is just insulting him left, right, and center. Absolutely incredible. Um, and everyone else just does a really, really good job in this. And it shows very early on in Nolan's career that he just understands how to make movies. Like, you have to pay attention to almost every single detail in this movie to pick up on every single subtlety, every nuance, and how the movie kind of unfolds and what the real story is. Um, and very few directors ever do that. And that's why I respect Nolan so much as a filmmaker, is because he makes you pay attention to his movies. And, we need more directors like that, in my opinion, where, say what you will about their movies, but at least they get you talking. And, you know, this movie has stood the test of time for 25 years. This year marks its 25th anniversary, and we're still talking about this movie, still referencing this movie all these years later. Like, you know, for me, because I've talked about this in my Interstellar video, which is way early days on my channel, which I do intend on re-reviewing Interstellar for this series. Um, but I've kind of categorized Nolan's movies in my head, and I've kind of classed this one as, you know, kind of his breakout movie in a way, where it's like, look at what this guy was able to accomplish. Um, and I still kind of class it as that, or it's like you see this guy have the potential, but he needs that next step in order for him to become a household name. And luckily, next month I'll be able to cover off 3 of those movies that made Nolan a household name. But that's a story for next month. But what did you guys think of my review of Memento? And what are your guys' thoughts on Memento? Let me know down in the comments below. And my Odyssey towards the Odyssey is just getting started. And I'm going to have a lot of fun rewatching and watching all of his movies, because the amount of craftsmanship and the amount of detail that are in his movies is so far beyond. And I'm very much looking forward to watching all the rest of these. But in the meantime, guys, be safe out there. And wait, what was I doing? I'll catch you guys next time.